So, seen any good moves lately? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome back to the second episode of Seeing a Good Moves Lately with me, Joey Olberding. And today we have an awesome guest. Just a wonderful, wonderful person. We have here JFK. How are you doing, JFK?
Hey Joey, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for the kind words. Excited to be here and talk about my favorite show.
Yeah. We're here to talk about, of course, the second episode of Survivor 48. And I gotta say, we're gonna get into like all the meat and potatoes and stuff like that. But like first, like I thought it was a very good episode too, very dynamic, with some interesting strategy that I'm excited to talk about. But first, I just want to know, JFK, what are your initial thoughts on the season, if anything?
I think so far so good. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm getting to know the characters. It still feels like a little bit of play setting. I think we're getting
Yeah.
to know everybody. We're seeing the relationships that are forming, but with the standard new era, only one tribe ever goes to tribal council in the pre-merge. We never really see how some of those where the real dynamics in the tribes and the other two tribes actually are. We're getting a lot of the Green Tribe, obviously, but the other two, it seems like there are some interesting situations to develop and pay off down the road. So I'm excited for how that all will play out. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
No, the point that you made about, one tribe only ever goes to tribal council in the new era is a pretty true one. And it's especially true with our good old pals, the Green Tribe here, because just on paper, they were already like way outmatched. You have David, Mr. Arms, I call him. And then you have the entirety of Purple Tribe, who, you have D1 athletes and, fire captains on there. And then the most powerful, I guess the most strong person on green is probably Kevin, who got his arm popped out and is now also voted out. So like, I don't know, rough spot for Green.
Yeah, they're done. I think that they're going to go back to tribe, and I'm excited to talk about the decisions that they made for who to vote out in this. For obviously voting out Kevin in this episode, and who is going to be at risk next time they go to tribal council, but especially who will be at risk if they're down to three and have to go again, because I think that'll get really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's just get right into it. But of course, you can't talk about this episode without talking very briefly about the last episode, specifically the decision to vote out Stephanie at the first tribal council. What did you think of that? Did you have any thoughts? Did it make sense to you? Anything like that?
Yeah, it made sense to me. Obviously, the decision seemed like it was between Say and Steph, and but Say, while she's playing a very aggressive game, it also seems like with the people that voted with her, she was being very straightforward and being honest. And in the early going of Survivor, that's kind of the best person to have because
Yeah.
she's got at worst, like merge boot written all over her, someone who's going to rub people the wrong way, but is giving you all of her information and being honest about it. That's a really great ally because even if you do make it to the end with her, very unlikely she's getting the votes to win. So that is someone you love to have with you. And I think it made sense, especially for Justin and Cedric too, to keep her. And I think for Kevin as well, it seemed like they were all playing together. And then we saw Kevin just overplay his hand a little bit this episode.
Yeah, well, the dynamic of how I felt that Kevin sort of misplayed his hand started at the very start of the episode when he goes after Tribal Council. He goes to Cedric and he goes to Justin and he says, "Hey, we need to get Say out of here. She is too dangerous. She has an idol." And to me, this was just a classic overplay. Like you're doing way too much right now, especially in the pre-merge. I think you really just got to go one vote at a time. And even though like you trust Mary and you like Mary, if she's the person on the outs, that's a good thing for your game. Especially when there could always be the possibility of a swap coming up or something like that. Like I think Kevin sort of needed to adjust to where the game actually was. It reminded me of Asia last season when she didn't want Saul to go home on the Red Tribe and was constantly advocating to go after Rome instead. Even though Rome, he wasn't, safe. He wasn't, um, completely like immune or anything, but he just really wasn't like going to be targeted at that stage in the game because I don't know. reasons. But anyways, that led to Asia being voted out herself. And to me, this situation with Kevin sort of trying to force himself into a power position kind of did that too. But obviously, a lot more of that comes once they lose the immunity challenge. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was table setting for what came later, and Kevin was definitely pretty transparent in what he wanted to have happen in a way that he just wasn't reading where the relationships really were and whether or not Justin and Cedric would want to go along with that.
Yeah, yeah. I agree, and obviously we'll get into it a little more. But let's talk about some of the other tribes. So we have Purple, we have Logi, and Logi is a really fascinating tribe in my opinion. I think everybody on the tribe is a dynamic and very interesting character, which I feel like you don't always get. Like that's kind of a rarity. Usually there's one or two people who are just kind of like, okay, well, what's this person doing here? But I really enjoy everybody's dynamic here, and thought Star feeling on the outs and stuff like that, looking for a beware advantage, looking for an idol and finding it, and what she chose to do with it, which was share it, which was very fascinating to me. But do you have any thoughts on that, or on the tribe as a whole?
I love the Purple Tribe. It's definitely the tribe that I have the most fun with when we go to spend time with them. I think everybody on the tribe is a character and fun in their own way and playing in their own way. And it was great to see Star in this episode really suss out that she was on the bottom of the tribe, that other relationships had been formed, and for whatever reason, they were forming around her and not with her. So she said, I'm going to change my situation in the game, and she went out and found the advantage. And I think her initial instinct to go to Joe was great. I think it's great for Joe. It shows how well trusted and respected he is by everybody in the group. And then I loved the move by Joe pulling in Shaheen so that it wasn't just Joe and Star working on this, and that the people that Joe was trusting wouldn't come back to get suspicious of him later, that he was trying to double dip, that he was being straightforward with at least someone so he could cover himself. So I think that was really good. I think it kind of got out of control. And there's a lot more that we could talk about there, but at least in that initial going from those three, I thought it was very interesting. And then we saw Shaheen talk through the dynamic of the options about what he and Joe could do in that moment where Star was choosing to trust them. Do they go all in with Star? Do they light play it, help her, but not give it the old college try, or do they just try to sabotage? And I think that was a really interesting dynamic that all happened. But to pull it all back to Star, I did think I thought she was really great this episode. And I hope we get to see, I hope she has some longevity in the game. I'm not quite getting the she's about to leave vibes from her edit.
Yeah, no, I think she's so big of a character that I'd be kind of surprised if she sort of flamed out this early on. But I mean, I agree with you. I think Purple is definitely the most interesting tribe to me personally of all of them in the game right now. I mean, I think all of them are so fun to watch in their own ways. I think, well, first of all, Joe is my winner pick. I don't really know if I think he's actually going to win, but it's like Joe's solidarity. I have to stick with the Joes out there. But the person that fascinates the most to me is Shaheen. Shaheen, just like you see him like I think if you have a conversation with him for like 30 seconds, you know that this guy is like serious. This guy is here to play his ass off. And like I feel it every single conversation he has, no matter whether it's about gameplay or not. I remember during the 46, maybe even 47, like pre-game stuff, Shaheen was there and was like in the casting process. And people just kept talking about like this guy with the beard seems really serious. And it's just like Shaheen, like I feel like he knows everything. I just feel like even though he's such a big like presence and like everybody sees that this guy's serious, I just don't see how people are going to be able to rally against him because he's a debate professor. He's a debate professor. He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to influence them. It's wild. And I really like watching him because I think he's got it. He knows how to play the game.
Yeah, I think Shaheen is my favorite character right now. I loved listening to him talking about the options before when he first got brought in by Joe. And then especially when Thomas came over and said, we should just get rid of the key. Let's just
I love
toss
that.
it. And then Star is a sitting duck. And Shaheen's there to play hard, but he's trying to play smart. And that is not a smart play for him specifically, because he
No.
was the person that was trusted with that information. So even a best case scenario there, they do lose, Star goes home. Everybody knows on that tribe that Shaheen is the one who was trusted with the key and tossed it. Like that doesn't blow back on Thomas. That blows back on Shaheen. He's like, I'm not doing that. And also just seemed to feel a little gross about the idea. So it shows that he's got a bit of a connection with Star, even if he's
Yeah.
not necessarily completely aligned with her. And I think he might be a little more aligned than some of the others. I don't think he wants to see her necessarily go first. So I think that but showing that shows that he's building relationships with the people on the tribe. And I think that speaks pretty highly to him as a person and his winner equity down the road if he
Yeah.
does have those relationships that are getting built, and he's not willing to make anybody look like a fool along the way as well. That's somebody that is smart enough to get to the end and likable enough to get the votes when they're there.
Yeah, very, very good point. Speaking of likable, I really, as you just mentioned it, what Thomas did when he learned of the advantage and no hesitation was like, well, why don't we just get rid of it? I was sitting at home and I was like, do it, do it, do it, please, please. But obviously, as you mentioned, it wouldn't be a smart move for Shaheen, so he shut it down. But oh, I would have loved it because that's just like that's taking the sort of beware advantage nature of the new era where like you have to be collaborative to get these idols. We see it season after season after season and flipping it on its head. Now you have to be especially careful who you talk about because they could just get rid of the apparatus you need to get the idol. But no, not this time. But I really like the idea from Thomas, and I want to see shenanigans like that. I want to see people say, well, why don't we just like sabotage that person? They can't do anything about it, but not this time around.
Yeah, and it's hard to say. I think that that's a play you run when you're already going to tribal council.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When the person is going to have the chance to, as we saw the Orange Tribe, Camilla just solved the puzzle without using the clues at all. So it is possible that even without the key, Star would find a way to get it open. I mean, I would have just taken a rock to the whole thing and smashed it. But I don't know if that would have been legal. But I think that if they were going to tribal council, you have that conversation. You're like, okay, let's just get through this. This was going to be the vote anyway. Let's make sure this trinket doesn't open up, and then we'll come back to camp and see what happens with the next adventure that shows up. But without knowing that they're going to tribal, and with them probably looking at themselves and going, we might never go to tribal. I
Yeah.
don't think that's what you want to be doing when you don't know if Star is going to find new allies down the road, and then that would come back again to haunt you.
Yeah, exactly. At best, if you do that with Star, she's gonna be like, "Well, I should have an idol, but I don't, and so I don't trust my allies anymore." And she's more likely to flip come the merge if she gets there. And to be fair, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Star's already thinking about flipping. I mean, she can definitely sense that she's probably on the bottom. But also in this episode, she was like, "Well, I was on the bottom, but I brought it back with this idol, and now I'm in a good spot." So I mean, that just kind of shows how it's kind of tough to judge your position before you go to a tribal council. But yeah, I thought it was interesting regardless. And as you mentioned before, I really liked how Joe played it. I really like the fact that it wasn't just him and Star knowing about this; that he brought in basically everybody else to it. Really smart. I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
But
I thought it
yeah,
was great. And it will be interesting to see. This is one where, we see with the Green Tribe say, telling everybody about the idol is protecting her from going. We see she gets told the votes might come your way, play your idol. People trust you when you give them information. So, with some more time to continue to develop that trust, you could see Star getting ingrained with the tribe, and maybe the people that are showing to be a little less trustworthy, like Thomas, maybe the blowback comes on him if they do end up at tribal.
yeah. And yeah, so purple right now, very strategic, despite never going to a tribal council. Green right now, pretty strategic because they have to go to every tribal council. And meanwhile, you got the Orange Tribe. They're just doing whatever. They're just kind of vibing out. Like there's 6 people, and like there's kind of a strategic dynamic there. But like they're also just talking about like the fact that David has 4 nipples or whatever, and that's what's making the show. So I mean, if any tribe I feel like might not go to tribal council, it's that one because they're just like not talking strategy like at all right now.
Yeah, you could see it. You saw like a little bit of strategy where they were saying David was saying that he likes Mitch, but he doesn't trust Charity, and Mitch is aligned with
Mhm.
Charity, and no idea where that comes from. Like Charity
Yeah.
seems like just a delightful person to be around. I thought her and Mitch were so sweet in this episode as Mitch is having, an all-star episode. He goes
Mhm.
on the journey, he comes back with an advantage, he tells his tribe the truth straight up, and then he's the hero of the immunity challenge.
Yeah.
So that's a really fun duo to watch. And David now has his 4, but he doesn't really seem out on either of them either. So I'm with you. I could definitely see that being a tribe where, I have no idea who would go
Yeah.
if they went to tribal, because they all seem pretty enmeshed with each other.
Yeah, they seem pretty, together in terms of like, kumbaya, but also there's no real like total standout character on there. Like maybe it's Mitch, maybe it's David, but like between Kyle, Camilla, Charity, and Chrissy, it's like they're all just kind of like a big question mark right now. We got a bit of Camilla, and I like Camilla. I honestly think she's in one of the best spots in the game. Just because I can tell that she's a very strategic mind. She solved that Beware advantage so quickly. But it's also a big question mark. So I really want to see where the dynamic of that tribe goes in the future. But yeah,
Me too. I did love that their Beware Advantage segment where it was they found it. Kyle was really excited. Kyle looks at it for 5 seconds, hands it over to Camilla, says, "Find my idol, please." And Camilla does. That was so great watching her work. It was it really tickled my brain watching her just try to solve that and not have to use any of the clues as she's going, just kind of knowing what the possible combinations are. Clearly does a lot of word puzzles like that in her day to day. So primed to be thinking that, and the perfect person to be allied with in that moment. That was a lot of fun.
well, this is what's interesting for me because it makes sense to me why Kyle would do that with Camilla. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me why Star would do that for Shaheen, and Joe, and then they would agree like immediately, like okay, well yeah, we'll help try to solve this. Because as we mentioned before, when Shaheen was like going through the different like things of what he could do, he was like maybe I could help her a little, maybe I could just do nothing, maybe I could fully solve it. And to me, it's like if Star is somebody who's already on the outs, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying about Mary beforehand on the Green Tribe. It's like if somebody's already on the outs, like why change that up if you're already in such a good spot where the heat's not going to go back on you, especially if you can guarantee that Star doesn't get an advantage. But I mean, I understand it in terms of like she trusted me to do this, so like at least I know somebody trusts me in this game fully, but I don't know. I'm still kind of out on helping start with the advantage right now.
I think for me, it kind of depends on what the reason that she's on the outs really are. And is there even a reason, or is it just that a few other people bonded more quickly?
Yeah.
So, with the opportunity to develop more of a genuine relationship before you have to deal with going to tribal, maybe on the outs is too harsh of a phrase for what is even really the dynamic. If 4 of the other 5 just bonded a little more quickly, but then once they start playing, or even before they start playing, if some of them seem like they might be less trustworthy than this person who showed up asking you for help with the actual advantage in the game, I think that can be a way to change your fate when no one has been put to the test for showing their loyalty yet. If they'd already voted, I think
Yeah.
that
Good
might
point.
be different if they'd voted and started and vote with them. And so there were already some potential sour grapes to worry about, then that might be the case. But it seems like just a situation of it's only been 2 or 3 days. We saw when Star told Thomas and Bianca about the advantage as well. Thomas said something to the effect of, "Oh, I've been waiting for the moment where you open up, and it just seemed like maybe Star was quiet compared to the rest of them and hadn't
Yeah.
quite found her footing. Thomas clearly did not want to help her solve it, wanted to sabotage it, but maybe someone like Shaheen, and especially Joe, who just seems like such a softie at heart, might really end up developing more of a genuine relationship with Star. So it'll be interesting to watch, I think, how Star's relationship with Eva develops over the next episode or two. Because obviously we saw Star was pitching Eva as the vote out. That's not going to fly with Joe. They reinforced that relationship this episode when Joe told Eva what was going on, but to relax and that they'd figure it out together. And Eva did seem like she didn't, at least immediately, get too worried or start to spin about it. So if Star and Eva start to develop more of a friendship, an allyship, then maybe the tides shift towards Thomas and Bianca if they do go to tribal.
Yeah, I mean, purple is really interesting just because it's basically three duos at this point. It's Joe and Eva, who are absolutely together, not going to turn on each other ever. You have Thomas and Bianca, who we haven't got a ton from Bianca, but it seems like those two are pretty lockstep together for now. And then you have Shaheen and who am I missing?
Star.
And Star, Shaheen and Star, who definitely aren't like a duo like the other ones. Shaheen's definitely kind of everywhere right now. But I mean, Shaheen is also the person who's looking out for Star the most, and it seems like Shaheen would rather have Star in the game than someone like Thomas, who after the throw away the advantage debacle, he doesn't really trust anymore.
Yeah,
So I'll be interested because I think theoretically Shaheen should have the most power, but Joe has the strongest connections with people. So yeah, I really want to see them go to tribal council. I think it would be like an absolute fantastic scramble, but they haven't so far. So yeah.
agreed.
Well, all right. We may as well get to the journey, which also happened after all these, just general shenanigans. So Mary, Mitch, and Thomas go on this journey. But first, before we go to the journey itself, I want to talk about Say and Mary. This thing was crazy where they have to put out their hands and the lowest unique number gets to go on the journey. And I don't know why they did this, but they did a practice round, which I mean I guess I get it, but also like I knew what was coming before it happened. Like as soon as say won, I was like, but then they brought her back, and the look on her face is just like that of like the shock and the confusion. Like I won, despite the fact that everybody agreed to this practice round. Oh, it's so funny. And then and then the cherry on top is Mary winning and going on the journey, which is just a chef's kiss, just like so you can't it's perfect. It's a perfect joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's great.
it's amazing. It's the kind of thing that happens that makes people look at reality TV and go, "That's scripted." But
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
watch Say, and you're like, "No one could script what is
yeah.
happening on this island." I would, I give a lot of credit to I think Mary and Steph because I think that they have been biting their tongue in a way that I could not if I was on a tribe with Say. I would be losing my mind. I think
Yeah,
we saw
yeah,
the start of the episode when they come back from tribal. Say has the comment to Mary. She says something like, we can move forward. I wasn't expecting my name though. And you knew in that moment, there's no moving forward for these two. There's nothing that could possibly, like, Say will not let this go. She will continue to say she is letting it go, but will
yeah,
never actually let it go, which is one of the most frustrating personalities that you can deal with. And when you're with them 24/7 in an environment like Survivor, that's got to be wearing. So I was really happy for Mary in that moment that she got to go to the journey because she got to get away from the people that all just blindsided her and really stick it to Say. And she seemed to really take that to heart when she was on the journey. She said, I know Say is upset, but I'm happy for me. And she
yeah.
should be.
I kind of adore the way that Say has been playing this game so far. I love the fact that she, on the first day, brought in four people and was like, "This is the group. We're going to the end. We're gonna be loyal to each other." And then, like, I don't know. just has been so, I don't know, off her rocker to some extent. Just like, just saying what she feels. Like she's playing a game that you do not see in the new era. Like if she just is wearing her heart on her sleeve, and she is just like so confused as to why, you know, people are acting in the name of fairness when it's a game for $1 million. Like, why not just alienate Mary? Why are we doing this? And it's like, okay, so you don't, that's not really how, you should necessarily act, or, should, but it is very entertaining television. And I don't want her to go. I want her to stay for a while. She's making this season for me so far.
I think you're in luck. I definitely don't think she will be the next person to go from that tribe. I think it'll be Mary. And then if and when they do go back to tribal. But yeah, I agree. I think it was a great play for the first early part of Survivor. It is a fast game. You get in, you find four, and you stick together because on the small tribe, that's the best you can do, especially if you end up at tribal, at the first tribal. You don't have enough time really to find the people that you're really bonding with, that really form the deep, long lasting relationships that alliances in the end game are really built on. And then she found that they were advantage, and she told the foursome. So she built that immediate trust before they'd even gone to tribal. And then it became kind of obvious for Cedric, who clearly does have a personal relationship with her, who looks at her as, like he said, compared her to his daughter and said, she called him dad. So that's a close relationship. And then Justin, who's playing a little more with his head and saying, yeah, she's being straightforward with me. And Kevin is scheming. And I don't have a close bond with Mary. So it makes more sense for me looking down the road to keep Say around, who will get me through not just this vote, but also the next vote.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And she is playing hard, but you saying that reminded me of the most annoying confessional from this episode. Which to me, just like I was just like, come on, which was Kevin giving a confessional about why they should get rid of Say, and saying Say has been playing this game since day one. It's like, okay, what day are we on? We're on day five. And if you're not playing the game on day one, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's only 26 days, like,
Yeah.
and even if you don't, playing the game doesn't necessarily mean that you're out here like making a Final Four deal, but like, if you're kind of like what Stephanie was doing apparently, and just kind of like enjoying the experience and taking a back seat and waiting for the game to come to you, like, even if that's not playing aggressive, that's still a strategy that you're using to play the game. It might not be a great one, but everybody's playing the game. Like, it's not like anybody's here just for, being on an island. Everybody knows that they're playing a game for $1 million. This isn't the year 2000 anymore. And so when Kevin said that, I was like, come on.
Yeah. It's one of those throwaway things that people say just because they don't have another like
Yeah.
strong point to make their case. They just go, oh, they're just playing so hard. But he also said in a confessional, it might have even been the same one, that something along the lines of, she's the biggest threat out here. Pregnant
That
pause
that is also,
next to me, which is just, that was like, oh, he's gone. Like that's
yeah.
such a bad confessional line to get at that point. It just felt like really bad omen for him.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right, let's get back to this journey, because
Yeah.
after all that, Say is very upset about the fact that Mary gets to go on this journey. But this journey does happen. And so Mary, Mitch, and Thomas go on this journey, and they all have to separate out after, saying hi or whatever. And they have to solve a number puzzle where they're like sliding the numbers in order from 1 to 15. And I'm not much of a puzzle person. I talk, I don't think. So I don't know if I would have done this, but I mean, two out of the three were able to finish it. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think?
I was a little underwhelmed by the presentation of it.
Yeah,
It seemed like a fun puzzle that I might enjoy doing, but it didn't really come across on screen. The first time I watched it, I wasn't even really paying attention. The second time, I was trying to think through a little more how the strategy of it actually would work, and I was like, oh, it's kind of an interesting puzzle, but like I don't know, I'm not going to try to solve it on my own. It wasn't particularly visual, so it was fine. Like, they seemed to struggle with it. I think it's good when someone fails, for sure. Um, before they got to the puzzle, it also struck me that we didn't really see them interacting at all when they got to the
No, we
journey.
didn't.
They didn't show them talking. You know that most of the time they do get at least some time to get to know each other, to say if they're gonna spill. You see secrets getting spilled there, and then people coming back and having to own up to what they said. There was none of that, which told me that these are probably not relationships that I might be surprised if these three even end up on screen on an island together outside of a
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at the three people like Mary, Mitch, and Thomas. They're all still in the game, but I think Mary, without a doubt, is the one who has the worst odds of making it out of the pre-merge for sure. But that's just because she's been on the bottom basically the whole game and didn't have a vote this past tribal because she didn't win. She didn't win the puzzle. While Mitch and Thomas did. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think these are dynamics that are gonna, you know, flourish, shall we say.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see the Mitch Thomas connection being one that moves waves. But yeah,
No, they seem like they have got pretty different play styles too. So I think that even if they do, they won't mesh well.
yeah. So in terms of the actual advantages won in this journey, you have Mitch who wins a block a vote, and Thomas who wins a steal a vote. And to me, like these are like kind of essentially the same thing. They're not, but they are. They basically just block a vote essentially, or sort of counterbalance a vote if you use it in some way. So like if you use a steal a vote, you could just put one additional vote on somebody else. Like I put two votes on JFK when he can only put one on Joey. While block a vote is more direct and just saying JFK, you can't vote for me. But I kind of feel like they're similar powers, but I've never really seen a block a vote or a steal a vote work out too much. I feel like that's the type of advantage people either hold on to too much or they just kind of waste. So I'll be interested to see what Mitch can do with the block a vote or what Thomas can do with the steal a vote because now that Thomas has it, I mean he seems like a very smart player. He could use that very well if he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the steal a vote is better than the block a vote because it's the block a vote plus you
Yeah,
also get to cast that vote.
true,
So
true,
it's
true, true.
interesting that it was there, but I think I'm not up in arms about the fact that one got a better advantage because, like you said, it's hard to use these advantages in a way that really end up affecting the vote. We've seen it a
Mhm.
couple of times. I think Marianne played the steal a vote. Was it a steal a vote against Omer pretty
Yeah,
effectively, but
yeah,
maybe a little more effectively in how she was able to rally the votes with Romeo at camp that day. It
exactly.
becomes more of a threatening tactic than the mechanics within the vote actually end up leading to a change in who's going home.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was getting at was the idea of like, yeah, sure, these advantages like seem nice, but at the end of the day, you have to still you can't rely on it. And it's kind of like an idol. Most of the time you can't necessarily rely on an idol to get you to the end of the game and win. Um, you still need to play well strategically and you still need to form good social bonds. I kind of feel like using a block vote or a steal a vote effectively is the same way. And yeah, I'm not sure. We haven't really seen enough of either of these tribes strategically and in terms of having to go to tribal council way to know how well Mitch or Thomas could orchestrate a vote. But I do think Thomas, if he wants to gain power on that tribe, has the means to do so. If he knows how to sort of strong arm people with that. Mitch, considering the way that he came back from the journey, and was just so willing to say, "Hey, I won this block of vote for the tribe." I think in some sense is good because it definitely lowers that threat level and lowers the threat of the block of vote being used during the pre-merge. But on the other hand, I think it's harder to sort of strong arm people into your corner with the knowledge that everybody knows about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I lost my train of thought there, but it like we said with this tribe, it's hard to know whether or not they'll even end up at tribal council.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting what happens when there is a little more intermingling and the stories between Mitch and Thomas aren't lining up anymore.
Mhm.
On the next journey, are they going to talk about what? Did Mitch let them know that opting out was not a choice? They couldn't have opted not to play and not risk their vote. So when someone on the purple tribe hears that, is there going to be blowback on Thomas because of that?
Yeah, that's a good point too. I'm always fascinated because this happens most seasons when there's journeys like and stuff like that where there's some discrepancy between the tribe of like what really happened. Someone's lying a little, but I feel like for the most part it never really comes back and affects the season that much or affects any votes or anything. Um, people can find out that you're lying and people can find out that, oh, you do have an advantage, but I feel like the trustworthiness of what you said after the journey never really comes into play. It just feels like it should, but I don't know if it ends up actually being a big deal in terms of determining who goes home and who stays. But I don't know.
That's true. So, just for fun, Joey, what do you think Mary's advantage would have been if she had won? Would she have gotten the extra vote?
That's a good question. I mean, it would have to be something similar to the other two, for sure. I think an extra vote is a good call,
Those are the three
because
big voting advantages we've seen. So it feels like that's probably the natural, obvious third one in there if they're going for a
yeah,
different one for each person.
yeah, that totally makes sense. And, if Mary did get that extra vote, I think, inevitably she'd be in a better spot, obviously. But yeah, I'm not sure because I guess we'll never know.
She'd be in a better spot, but chances are I feel like she would have ended up playing it that round against Say and had it get negated, and Kevin goes home anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this Mary Say dynamic is so fun to me because Mary gets back to camp after the journey and she says, "Hey, I'm sorry. I lost my vote. I didn't win." And Say hears that and is like, "Oh, I think she's lying."
Thinks she's
Which,
lying and
yeah,
says, "Oh, well, you don't seem that upset about it, so that's good." And Mary's like, "Well, it feels like a nail in the coffin." Um, it's just, yeah, there's no filter,
hmm
no tact. She is I was thinking in the first episode and again in this episode, Say is the kind of person who says whatever is on her mind at all times and then hides under the guise of, well, I'm just a really honest person and I just really live my life in an upfront way. And
yeah,
that can be a really frustrating personality to be around when it's like,
mhm,
um, you're hiding behind honesty as an excuse for being kind of a douchebag.
yeah.
And it's so much fun to watch. And then she actually said that at Tribal Council, which we'll get to later on. But I was like, there it
Mhm.
is. There's the line. Take a drink. It's so funny. And yeah,
Yeah.
felt bad for Mary in that moment, but she was, even if she had won that advantage, like I said, if it was an extra vote or a block of vote, it wasn't going to change her fate at that point. She needed someone else to make a mistake, which is what exactly what happened.
Yeah. And after this journey, not too much else happens that we did not really talk about. Thomas lies to Purple about, whether he could opt in or opt out. He chose to opt out, or at least he said he did, I should say. And Mitch publicly said that, he got this advantage, he got this blocker vote. And then after that, we get more of the Camilla decoding this idol for Kyle, which, as we kind of mentioned earlier, she did like 80% of the legwork there, if not more. I mean, she did basically the whole thing. Um, but I do think it is powerful to be the ally of somebody that has an idol. Because you're always going to be less of a threat than the person who's actually holding the idol if it's public. So I don't think it's like bad for Camilla's game at all. It's just kind of like, well, she deserves to get the idol, but of course that's not how it works.
For sure. I'm happy that it seems like Kyle and Camilla are the duo. That it's not
Mhm.
like Kyle and David found the idol and then pulled in Camilla as the third and she opened it up, but the two boys are using it for each other. Kyle does
Yeah,
seem really genuine in that relationship with Camilla. He obviously found it with David, but he seemed pretty excited to pull her in as well, partially because he knew she would solve it, but then had really good things to say about her. So that does seem like it's really for the two of them. If Camilla needs it and Kyle's around, you get the sense that Kyle playing it for Camilla is on the table at this point in time.
yeah, totally, totally. Um, and then we get to this reward immunity challenge, and there's a lot of like little things I want to talk about here. First of all, this is kind of one of the most insane parts to me is that, they have somebody they can sit out from both tribes. And Purple, Locky decides to sit out Star, who is literally a basketball player, for the challenge in which you throw the buoys into, the basketball challenge. Which I thought was crazy. It didn't end up mattering, but to me it was more indicative of Star being on the bottom of the tribe than basically anything else that happened the rest of the episode. Like, that showed me that people don't really value Star on the tribe, like, in any way, collectively.
Yeah, and they set it up from the jump of the episode, or the jump shot of the episode, because it's basketball. But they're talking about, the Purple Tribe was talking about how they're going to be able to sit someone out, and it's probably going to be Star, and that's what clued Star in to say, "Oh, I think I might be on the bottom here.
Yeah,
I've got to
that's
change
true.
my feet." So it was telegraphed and set up, so it wasn't a surprise to see necessarily for the way the episode was going, but and they ended up, coming in second, so it was fine for that point in time. But yeah, it was pretty funny to see that, they didn't. And I'm
I
not sure why they sat her out, if that was
Yeah.
what the reasoning was necessarily. But yeah, you're right. Like, there's a basketball shot at the end. Why not have her there? But
I don't get it at all. I guess it has to be like an embarrassment of riches thing where you have so many people who are good at different aspects of the challenges. Like, you have Joe, who obviously you're not going to sit out, Shaheen, who seems to know his way around everything. And then you have Eva, who is, once again, a, a college athlete.
yeah.
And then you have Thomas and Bianca, who have been on the puzzles. And so I guess I can see the argument where Star is the weak link there, but I don't really get it, but I mean it was something they talked about as a tribe, and I guess they agreed to before they even knew what the challenge was, which I think is like a little, it's sort of like, throwing away an advantage, like Thomas was suggesting, before you ever go to tribal council. It's like, why think that far ahead when you can just decide there at the challenge based on what you see? Like, obviously, it didn't end up mattering. Logi still won the challenge, but if I were being sat out, if it were like a getting on your soapbox and talking challenge, and they sat me out, I would probably be like, "What's going on here?" You know what I mean?
It did give us the moment of Star leaning over to Camilla while they're both on the sit out bench and just introducing herself. And that's all it was.
Yeah.
But it was so funny to see. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, is there about to be an advantage under this sit out bench? Are they about to find something? What's going on here? But it was, just a polite hello. I'm Star. I'm Camilla. Nice to meet you. And file that away in your brain to see if those two end up talking to each other, if they end up having, if they end up being allies down the road. Is this the start of showing how their relationship developed, or is it just a fun throwaway thing that you can do when the episodes are 90 minutes long?
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, if I were on one of those benches and, I was on the sit out, I would not be sitting down. I would just be going around looking under
Oh yeah.
every plank of wood, searching the entire thing, and I would not be subtle about it because, like, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah, because everybody's going to be, someone is going to say, so did you find
Yeah,
anything on the bench? Did you look
exactly.
around the bench? They're going to be assuming anyway, so you might as well look.
Yeah. That's how I feel anyways, and most of the time there isn't something there anyways, so I don't think people would even look into it all that much. Um, but anyways, so this is just kind of one of your classic, a million things are happening and, who knows what's going on challenges where you're jumping, you're diving, you're duh, 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 duh. And here we got, something that a lot of people have been sort of, joking about, which, was poor Kevin's, terrible dive. Kevin just, I don't know if you saw this, JFK, but Kevin did not dive very well. Did you see this?
Yeah, I did. And I'm always pretty judgmental of the survivors dives when they go in, so I always think it's funny when they flop, so to speak.
And yeah, and this was an episode where Kevin did unfortunately flop in many ways. Um, but yeah. Here, I was gonna provide a picture, but let me see if I can present this. Um, yeah, this was just like, so I'm not. a person who dives ever. Not my thing, but that's okay. So when I see something like this, and just give me a second. It's kind of hard to do this on this service that we're using. It takes a second. Um, but it just it let me get to the right thing. Okay, yeah, here it is. He's just I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like he wants to dive, but he's also scared of the water. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
Um, yeah.
I
I,
think
I
I think he said in his exit interview, I don't know if you listened, that his shoulder popped back out and he shoved it back in as this was happening.
oh,
Maybe I made that up, but I thought something after the dive was so bad that his shoulder was hurting again afterwards in some way.
yeah, I guess that's the thing. I can't judge. I don't think I would dive any better. I don't think I'm not, an Olympic swimmer or anything. I don't dive in my spare time, as I said. So I might do the exact same thing, but it's just the fact that they put it on television. Like I'm sure there's 10 million embarrassing moments in these challenges. These people have never gone across these giant obstacle courses before. But it's just
But only one
it's
person is getting voted out at the end of this episode. So you're seeing
exactly.
all of Kevin's stuff.
Yes, this was really just a bad challenge over Kevin, just like in every because not only do you have this dive that's getting, memed on or whatever, you also have him basically losing the challenge for the Green Tribe. It's him and Cedric. They put it all on Cedric basically at the end of the challenge and afterwards, but it really is a group effort of failure between Kevin and Cedric here, where they're trying to put these buoys on these poles and hold it up while they go across the balance beam. And quite frankly, everybody else is having like a relatively easy time with it. Not like, a super easy time, but like getting it in like 2 to 3. And I don't know how long they were on this buoy thing, but they had to go at least 20 times and just kept failing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was a blowout, and it was interesting at the end that it seemed like in Say's confessional, she mentions, "Oh, Cedric failed, but I'm not voting him out," and Cedric is trying to take the blame afterwards. But it was a two-person effort, so I don't know what Cedric could have been doing that was so much worse than Kevin. And
Mhm.
you would think that Kevin, the one with the recently dislocated shoulder, in a tricky challenge like that requires some stability and arm dexterity, that having a shoulder that was just popped out probably makes it really hard.
Yeah.
So that's tough. There's not much you can do about that, though.
This is sort of the interesting thing to me about Kevin and the shoulder, saga, shall we call it, is that Kevin gets his shoulder popped out, and they show that he gets injured, and he's like, "Ow, ow, ow, my shoulder," and then they don't really show anything, and they just kind of throw him at this journey, and then they don't talk about this shoulder thing for the rest of his time on the show. They just kind of don't mention it, which with 90-minute episodes, I was a little surprised by. The thing it reminded me the most of was another shoulder injury on the first challenge of a Survivor season, which was in Survivor Heroes versus Villains when Stephanie LaGrossa got her shoulder popped out during the sandbag brawl challenge, and then they did show her getting popped back in. And you know what? Coincidentally enough, not only was Stephanie the second person voted out of her tribe that season, she was also the second person voted out of the game that season, much
Mhm.
like Kevin. So, I don't know if there's, a correlation or causation, but all I'm saying is try not to pop out your shoulder on Survivor. It doesn't work well for you unless
Or
you're
if you
Tyson.
if you do, I think act like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you,
Yeah.
and you are completely useless in all things and
Mhm.
could never be a threat at all, can't win a challenge to save your life, and you'll go to the end and win because no one will vote you out.
Yep, and that's what happened to Tyson in Blood versus Water. So I mean, these
Exactly.
these are there are ways to play it, and yeah, yeah, I think Tyson in that season completely saying basically like, oh yeah, I'm useless, I can never win a challenge, and I'm just here, and don't worry about me, I'm never gonna win an immunity challenge, and then at the very end of the game being like, oh yeah, by the way, I was fine the whole time, and then wins like one or two immunity challenges at the very end to secure his win is it's great. And I don't know if Kevin could have done that because it looked like Kevin was in legitimate pain. And he wasn't playing it up at all. But he was also trying to downplay it, which I think in a challenge like this probably, it probably wasn't great. It probably wasn't great, and maybe he should have been on with somebody else who maybe knew what they were doing a little more. But I don't know. That's all armchair quarterbacking. It's impossible to know. So yeah.
Yeah. I also loved when Kevin and Cedric are struggling, and it shows Say and Mary, and Say screams something at the top of her lungs, just like literally at the top of her lungs, and then pauses for a second and looks at Mary and goes, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to scream."
I did not catch that. That's funny.
Just, yeah, you did say. That's okay. You're outside. You're having fun. You're cheering. It's okay.
It's funny too because like it's probably so quiet there too. Like she didn't
Yeah.
need to scream. It's not like that the music that's playing during the immunity challenges is actually there. They're
Right.
just silently wading through the water and failing. And if Say is like da 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 da. Meanwhile, like she's not that far away. It probably honestly just adds more pressure to Cedric and Kevin. But yeah, it is funny though. Very
That's
funny.
great. Yeah. For the teams that won, loved it. Another great moment from Mitch to close out the episode for the Orange Tribe. He was
Yeah.
on the balls. It seemed like he just sunk them one after the other, after the other, after the other, and then they were done. And you saw everybody on the tribe got really excited and celebrated with him. So I know they were showing us the potential for David to maybe think about turning against Mitch at some point, but it does seem like that is a tribe that is gelling right now, and they're not in danger of going to tribal anytime soon because they're clicking.
Yeah. One thing that, a lot of people say about the new era is, and really just like modern Survivor in general, is that, it's too predictable. We're all doing the same things all the time. And that's something, I definitely agree with. However, there is something that I really like about how every season has a basketball challenge, and we can just figure out which of the contestants is good at hooping and which ones aren't. This episode was a fun one for that. We saw Joe get the first shot at it, and he is just like bricking shot after shot after shot. Then Eva comes in and just like starts sinking them left and right. And Mitch comes in. I think David was starting off shooting for Orange, and he's failing shot after shot after shot. And then Mitch comes in and just like does a granny style and hits every single shot. And it's like, you know what? I'm okay with having a basketball challenge every season because it's always I just think it's very fun.
It's
I
very
I
fun.
it's like a carnival game. I like seeing a carnival game or two during the season, and it's just like hey, by the way, let's take a detour and just figure out who's the best at basketball for this particular challenge. So yeah, I like these challenges a lot. I don't think every challenge needs to end with a puzzle or something like that. I think we can
Agreed.
just have a random sport thrown in there, just see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's not just like they didn't just wheel out a basketball hoop and say shoot
Yeah.
a free throw. It's the carnival game, it's out of the water,
Hmm.
you got the big basket, the ball's a buoy, and it's a little more fun. And then you see the guys who just try to shoot like they're playing Papa Shot and it doesn't go in, and then you get Mitch come in and actually think through how am I gonna land this? And then land it again and does it.
Yeah.
And it was a great time for him to shine. And yeah, Eva had great shots, and then did Joe end up finishing? Joe finished it for purple at the end, I think, and that was fun to
Yeah.
see. I
I,
think,
I think that's right. Yeah.
yeah,
Um. Anyways, so Green loses again, as I'm sure they will also lose in the future. It doesn't look too great for them. But anyways, they lose. They head back to camp, and Cedric immediately says, "You know what? This one was on me, guys. My bad. If you want to vote me out, feel free to." And this is something that I get, and I also don't get. When you go back after blowing a challenge and being like, "Hey, I'm totally fine to be voted out." I don't think I could ever do that. But also I feel like most of the time it works out for the people who say it. I feel like if you say that you want to go home, people were just like, well, we don't want to get rid of him or her. But I don't really get why. That's something I don't understand. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like it's the kind of thing you say when you know you're not actually in any danger. And I'm not
Yeah.
shading Cedric for that. I don't think that it was disingenuous on his part. I think he did feel responsible. I believe that he seems like a really nice guy. is coming across on screen pretty well, but he was not in any danger of going. He wasn't one of the names that was coming up. He is put sort of a swing vote, as Kevin is coming to him with one plan. Say obviously has the more straightforward plan. He knows that he's making a decision. It was never actually really a threat that it was going to be him. And I think that's tends to be what we see when it's someone who really is in more danger and they say, if you want to, they're not saying that because no need to give someone the excuse to write your name down when they're really thinking about writing your name down.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I do think regardless of whether Cedric said that or not, he was not going to go home this episode just based on the dynamics. But I mean, I guess it is a nice thing to say to show tribe camaraderie or something like that. I don't really know, but I agree. Like if you're on the bottom and you say that, like you're probably not going to say that if you know that you're on the bottom and you have a chance of going home. So yeah, that's fair. So yeah. After that, Say continues to say, okay, well, let's just get rid of Mary. She doesn't have a shot in the dark. She doesn't have anything. And then Kevin says, no, 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 I want to keep Mary. Let's try to rally and blindside Say with her idol. And, this is obviously a very risky plan. And to me personally, I think that I if in the pre-merge of Survivor, I don't know if I would go directly against somebody who has the power to negate all their votes if they get even a hint of the plan happening, which in a tribe of six is very possible. So this is kind of going back to what I said about Kevin earlier and like just kind of playing adaptable. The fact that he was not willing to get rid of Mary despite her really in essence being a sitting duck and being like an easy target is just kind of like I get what you're doing, Kevin, but like you gotta play more adaptable than that. And that's how I felt anyways.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're going to do that, I think it has to be the situation where everybody's sick of the person with the idol anyway. Everybody already really wants to do it. And you're just maybe helping fan the flames that are already there a little bit. You can't be trying to convince them that this is the right thing to do when they're kind of comfortable with the status quo as it
Yeah.
is. They don't necessarily have the best relationship with the person that you're trying to save because then your play is really see-through as being very self-serving for you and not in the best interest of Cedric or Justin.
Yeah. And essentially to me, like with the way that this episode turns out, Kevin basically putting his game on the line to save Mary, like essentially he just threw away his game so that Mary could have an additional maybe one episode to stay in the game. Well, whereas if Kevin just stayed put and allowed what was going to happen, I think Kevin would still be in a very good spot. I think that he would definitely have a ways to be one of the last people remaining in the tribe. I think Justin would probably not want to work with someone like Cedric long term, who Cedric seems nice, but he also doesn't seem nearly as strategic as Kevin was. Or Say, who is still that big person and probably not somebody who a lot of people want to work with super long term, at least deep into the game. So I think Kevin could have gotten further in the game, but he was so hell-bent on saving his ally who didn't have a vote, didn't have a shot in the dark, didn't have anything, that I think it ultimately buried himself 6 feet under.
Yeah, I agree. And you have to wonder what he was thinking the dynamic would be when they came back. If Say had in fact left, is he thinking that it's now two duos, Justin
Yeah.
and Cedric against him and Mary, because that's not really in anybody's best interest? Or was he thinking that it would be him and Justin and Mary potentially voting out Cedric if they went back to tribal council? Because again, clearly there wasn't the relationship between Mary and Justin to make that happen. You saw him say to Mary, I need you just to chill. But if this play was going to work, Mary needed to be affirming her relationship with Justin in
Yeah.
order for that to feel like a viable option for Justin to move forward in the game with. Once it was on the table that that's what he wanted to do. You saw Justin went back to Cedric. Say had gone. Say did that. Say went to Justin and said she wasn't feeling great about Kevin, and that affirmed for him that Say was with him, that she felt comfortable enough to bring those concerns to him.
Yeah.
And so that was a path forward for him. It would get him through this vote. And in the next vote, Say is either willing to vote Kevin or Mary's still there and Say hates Mary. So she'll
Yeah.
definitely vote out Mary again. But even like voting Kevin here, she shows she's willing to put aside one animosity for what the group thinks is
Yeah.
the right vote out. So, and granted, Kevin is now saying her name, so it's kind of six of one, half dozen of the other for her at that point. But she's a bit adaptable. She didn't just stick in with it has to be Mary. So, you got to imagine that that's what Justin was thinking.
Yeah, and this whole thing about where Say puts her vote and the fact that she agrees to vote in Kevin is very interesting because you have Kevin putting out, hey, we're all gonna vote Say, we're gonna get rid of her, she's a big threat, she has this idol. And Cedric goes to Say and says, hey, your name's on the block, I need you to play your idol tonight. But just thinking purely in terms of numbers, if Say and Cedric vote together, at worst it's a tie vote, and I don't think either Justin nor Kevin would want to go to Rocks at this point. So I think there's an element of strong arming it, but Cedric kind of just says, "Don't worry about just play your idol, just get rid of it," which I think is honestly probably good. I'm of the opinion that if you have an idol in the new era, like it's better to burn it during the pre-merge than to have it during the merge, just because it paints a huge target on your back. But still, theoretically, Say shouldn't have had to play the idol this episode. But to me, and this kind of goes into tribal council, the fact that she said as soon as she heard her name, like, "Oh yeah, I'm playing this idol no matter what," and then actually followed through on it, I think also sort of helped the people in her corner, Cedric mainly, to actually trust her and probably want to work with her even more long term.
I think that's true. It does open up the possibility for another idol to be hidden on the beach.
Yeah,
And then if Mary finds it, that's bad. And Mary knows she's
that's
on the
true.
bottom, and that's
Yeah,
tough. But I agree. I don't think that I do think she's building trust by playing it, by showing, which is a little counterintuitive because usually you're saying, I have to play this because I don't trust that the votes aren't coming my way.
yeah.
But there is something to be said for saying you're going to do it and then just doing it. You're not trying to be cagey with it, playing a little more straightforward.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, so that's basically where things are going into tribal council. Say is, told to play her idol. But there may be votes on Kevin, there may be a vote on Mary, It's honestly pretty up in the air, which I thought was fun. The only guarantee is that basically Say is probably not going to go home unless she decided out of nowhere not to play her idol. But we get to tribal council, and we kind of get back to the stuff that you were talking about earlier, with Say talking about basically honor and integrity, very very Coach Wade type stuff, and all about how she's going to be honest to a fault in this game. And yeah, what were your thoughts? What were your thoughts?
Man, it was so funny. It's so fun to watch. It's infuriating. Like it's building emotion up in me as I watch it. Because I'm just sitting there thinking about being Mary in that position and how frustrating it would be. I do think that there is obviously there's a million different ways that you can play Survivor, and you can just play Survivor straightforward and as honest as you want to be. That's a viable way to play, knowing that it's potentially a dishonest game. I don't think it's inherently dishonest to say I'm playing an honest game. I don't think Say is playing a particularly honest game. She just blindsided Kevin, so
Uh-huh.
that's really contradicts that point that she made. She seemed like it just seemed like she felt very trusting in her group, as she should be, knew what she wanted to do, and just kind of wanted to get to the point of voting. Like she was antsy. She knew there was a blindside coming, and she was
Yeah.
antsy for it to happen. And she was playing with her food a little bit as she was making these points. But there was the moment where she talked about the core four. Was that what she said?
Yeah. She just said legitimately, like, yeah, there were 4 people and we're all against Mary.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I thought Kevin's reaction to that was really funny and maybe telling in a little bit of a way because he was like, "Oh, you blew up our spot." Like the 4 of you just voted together at the last tribal council.
Yeah.
It's not that hidden. It's not. It's pretty transparent that there was at least a 4 last time, and maybe things have shifted, but yeah, that's where the dynamics left the last time you were sitting around the fire having this conversation. So it's not blowing up really anybody's spot to say that. It's sort of insulting to Mary to try to say that that wasn't the situation before.
Yeah. It's weird because there's a whole element of tribal council that has always existed, which is like to some extent you want to dodge the questions that Jeff gives you, and being direct is like the last thing you want to do because when you are direct, it theoretically does blow up your spot and blows up your position in the game. But here it's like for say it's almost it's good and bad the fact that she was so willing to say, yeah, we have this alliance against Mary because on one hand it's like it reinforces her faith in the people who are with her, but also she's about to help blindside one of them. And also, like, if she does this at, the merge and says something like that and says, yeah, we're all against Mary, Mary is, blah, blah, blah. I've never trusted Mary. Then, why, how can her allies trust that? And so Say is just fascinating. This fascinating character to me. This walking contradiction of does things that should be trustworthy, playing her idol when she says she's going to, sticking with the people that she said that we're going to go to the end with or whatever, and then just doing too much, being too chaotic about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that she's been getting a lot of comparisons to Rome. And I think that there are a lot of differences, but it's those things that are similar. She's playing very straightforward. She's being very upfront with people
To a
that she
fault.
does not like.
Yeah.
And but she's being open and honest with her allies. And that's why Genevieve didn't want to vote out Rome. And that's why, because he was just a big shield for her right in front of her, but giving her good information. And that's why I think Cedric has more of a genuine relationship with Say than Genevieve had with Mary, but it's similar to Justin and Say. Say is bringing good
Yeah.
information, so maybe that's a little more like the teeny Rome vibe. Well, no, I think that teeny never really liked Rome, and it seems like you don't get the sense that Justin doesn't like Say.
Yeah.
But he's not the ire of her at this point. If Mary leaves and then Say turns her attention to someone else, which is kind of how I think folks like this function at time to time. They need someone to focus their attention on. And if that ends up being Justin, is he going to regret his decision from this tribal council if we get there? We'll see. But for right now, he doesn't seem to have any reason to dislike Say. I really liked Mary made the comment that smooth players are more incognito. And Say snaps back, are you calling yourself a smooth player? It's like, no, Say. Mary's calling you a not smooth player. She's not putting anything on herself at all right now. And there is just a lot of those back and forth moments that are fun in the early days of a Survivor season when you see these personalities that get put together and should never be put together in another situation.
I did want to talk briefly about Justin because we haven't talked about Justin, and Justin's also here. He's been here the entire time. He's wearing his pizza shirt and he's saying pizza related confessionals, and he's kind of running the tribe right now, which is he's just kind of there. He's there, but everybody else is falling forwards, and Justin isn't. He's just like he's playing a smart game. He's in the middle. He's been in the middle for both the votes, and he has pizza on his shirt. So yeah, I'm rooting for him. I guess he's a Boston guy, isn't he, JFK?
Is he a Boston guy? I
I think he
didn't
is.
pay that much attention to the pre-gaming, so I'm not sure where anybody's from. But
Gotcha.
that's great. We love a Boston guy. I love Boston pizza representing. I'll have to figure out where his shop is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Justin a lot. I am a bit worried for his longevity on a tribe that's gonna go back to tribal council.
Yeah,
I I think that he's okay for now. I think I understand his reasoning here for staying with Say and Cedric in this moment. It makes sense. But with what we've seen from the relationship between Say and Cedric, I would be worried if they get to uh, if they're back at tribal with only three, that Justin is the odd person out in that situation. That feels like a real possibility for this tribe that keeps losing. But I'm not sure that that's something you can necessarily be worried about as you're making this decision either, because no one expects to be the tribe that's going to be
sure.
going down to only two people left. You hope that that just doesn't end up being the case. Or if it looks like it's going in that direction, maybe Jeff throws you a bone and has a surprise swap.
Yeah. I mean, you raise a good point. I mean, I just think about the four people who are left on this tribe now. Mary, certainly going to be a target. I think Say is certainly going to be a target. And then I think you have Cedric and Justin, and I think Cedric has stronger bonds with everybody than Justin does.
Yeah.
Cedric has a stronger bond with Say, and I think Cedric probably has a stronger bond with Mary. We haven't seen Justin like connecting with people. We see him playing the middle and being like allies to people, but we haven't seen him have a duo with someone, which basically everybody else in this tribe has had. Say had it, Cedric has it, Mary has it, and even Kevin have it. But Justin has just kind of been wearing his pizza shirt and going around and not really saying a whole lot. But hey, it's gotten him this far, and he is still in the middle right now, so he could still be fine come next episode when Green inevitably loses again. But we'll see.
Yeah, and he's in good with Say. Say likes him. Say and Cedric like him. But you're right, and that was another thing that I think Kevin mentioned in his exit interview, that the first episode kind of alluded to Justin and Kevin being a duo, and Kevin said that that was not really the case out there. That they
Gotcha.
were close enough as strategic in a strategic alliance. Maybe if Kevin had stuck around, that would have developed a little bit further, but that they were not a duo at that point in time, which goes to your point that Justin's not really in close with one specific person. He's just kind of vibing with everyone on some level. So whether or not that gets him through to a swap or the merge, where maybe he finds his group, because we still get some content from him. It's not like he's completely purple, so he's doing things. But it just could be a situation where maybe he's the last one standing, and so only the relationships that he has down the road are important because none of these folks are left for him to be in an alliance with.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally I agree. And so we get to the vote, and of course Kevin goes home. And the decision we talked about the decision making this whole time basically, but Kevin goes home, and it's weird because theoretically Kevin is the biggest physical asset on the Green Tribe. He got his shoulder popped out, but theoretically he's still like the biggest guy. He has the biggest muscles or blah 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 whatever. But he's still gone, and honestly, I don't know if it really mattered whether they got rid of Say or Mary or Kevin. I think the Green Tribe would still obviously be at a disadvantage. But part of me is just like, at this point, if you're Green and you go back to Tribal Council the second time, and you have nobody that can compete against someone like a David or a Joe, like, do you hedge your bets? Do you say, well, I want to put my game in the best position down the road instead of just for one vote? Because that's kind of what I felt like Kevin was doing with trying to save Mary, was trying to make it so that he had as many allies on his side as possible instead of just, getting rid of somebody who was in his corner. But is that also playing too hard? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I am not sure that you can play hard enough when you're on a tribe like this.
Yeah,
Especially when there's someone else who is already playing extremely hard. You have to play to keep yourself safe if you are going to keep going back to
yeah,
tribal, which it did seem like he was pretty convinced they're going to be going back to tribal. So I do get what he was trying to do from that perspective, but you wonder what would happen if he had gone with the flow, let Mary go. Um, what would the dynamic be if when they go back to tribal council again? At that point, are they looking to get rid of Say, and are they going to try to run the blind side? Or did he feel like he would have been the odd person out there anyway, which pushes him to make a move now? Maybe that's why he felt a little bit of the heat, and like it was really important for that to happen. I really have no idea.
Yeah, me neither.
Based on the first episode, I think I would have said it would have been the girls in some order, and the guys would go to three. And then maybe you feel good about, if you're Kevin, maybe you feel good about the bond you're building up with Justin. Um, or But as we saw with the relationship with Cedric and Say, maybe he saw that too and realized that that was, well, he definitely didn't see that because he thought he thought Cedric was going to be in on the plan to blindside Say, which obviously he was not. But we know that, so maybe Kevin was always on a losing trajectory no matter what. So
Yeah.
this was a good move, but it was never going to work out for him.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And yeah, I think Kevin, I don't know necessarily where he went wrong. I think his biggest mistake was targeting Say specifically, somebody who has an idol and somebody who was, as we learned, was absolutely willing to play it and like was is a chaotic enough force so that you can't really rule out the possibility that she is going to play her idol, especially since apparently the season that they were watching before they came out to play was 46, where 10 million people got blindsided with an idol in their pocket. Say with the knowledge that her name was out there, I don't think wanted to go home with an idol. So yeah, I think if Kevin maybe had targeted, I don't know, maybe Cedric, maybe Justin, I think there could have been at least more of a conversation, like something could have happened, but I mean, we'll never really know.
And with Mary not having a vote, that was always going to be hard.
Yeah,
Mary
that's
losing
true.
a vote really put him in a corner for what he was able to do strategically.
All right. Now that we're at the end of the episode, Kevin gone, but now I have four questions for you, JFK, about
Okay.
the future of this season. So let's assume that every tribe loses tribal council, every tribe loses the immunity challenge. Who of the orange tribe of Kyle, Mitch, Camilla, David, Charity, and Chrissy, who do you think is going home of those six if they lose next episode? Right now.
If they lose next episode, I will say it's got to be between Charity and Chrissy.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Charity because we saw that there's a group of four who seems to, David is in some capacity a leader, either the true leader or the figurehead, and seems to want Charity out. And I think that they'd probably just give it to him as the early, easy vote. Um, my suspicion is that they don't end up being the losing tribe and Charity sticks
Yeah.
around for a little bit longer. Chrissy, we haven't seen much from, so I just get a little more of pre-merge boot from
I
her
agree. Yeah.
because of the lack of content, which is reading the edit, but
It's fair to do. It's valid. It's a valid
yeah.
thing to do. Yeah, to me, I mean, just looking at the tribe, I think there's no way that David goes home pre-merge. There's just no way. He's sort of the leader of the tribe, and he's obviously the strongest, at least appearance-wise, physically. I think Camilla has gotten a very I like her gameplay a lot so far. I would be very surprised if she goes home. Mitch, I mean, he carried that last challenge. I don't think he'll go home. Plus, he's formed good social bonds with people. Kyle, I'm not sure. Kyle does have an idol, so I don't think they'd go after him. I don't think they'd be able to get the votes against him. So I agree. I think it's between Charity and Chrissy. I would actually lean Chrissy more than Charity, just because Mitch and Charity do seem to have a very good bond right now, and
Mhm.
I haven't really seen Chrissy bond with anybody. We haven't really seen a lot from her in general. Um, and it does appear that physicality wise, she's probably the weakest on the tribe. She's, 55 years old. And, sometimes that does play a factor in who is on the in and who's on the outs of Survivor. So I would probably lean her
Yeah.
personally. Um, But then going to purple, purple, very fascinating right now. You got Shaheen, you got Eva, you got Joe, you got Thomas, who does have that steal vote. You have Bianca, and then you have Star. Who do you think would go home?
I think Thomas is in trouble.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
Thomas has put himself in a potentially tough position this episode. Obviously, he was advocating for Shaheen to lose the advantage key or whatever it is, the little spinner. Um, and he showed he's willing to play pretty deceptively in that way. And then he also lied to the tribe about what happened on the journey. And I think that, you make the point that it doesn't always matter what happens if people find out that you lied. But if people find out that you lied and also you've just shown that you're willing to play
It's
a
true.
pretty duplicitous game, I think that could flip around on him pretty quickly when someone like Shaheen is sitting there trying to think about what the right thing to do if they're going to tribal council is, and you've got Star, who has been straightforward and has the potential to have this advantage and wants to work with you, or Thomas, who is working with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You always are going to end up with that doubt. So I didn't mention this we were talking about the immunity challenge, but when the purple tribe, when Jeff was telling them that they got their whatever and they could go back, there was Star had her arm around Shaheen, and you saw Shaheen just gave her hand a little kiss. It was a really
Yeah.
tender moment.
Yeah.
That maybe it means nothing, but also it was something. It was clearly there's some level of closeness between the two of them, and I don't know that they'll go to tribal next episode, but if they do, or the first time they do, especially if this kind of play continues, I think it's tough. And it sucks because we all got really excited about the California girls, but I I do worry for Thomas in that situation.
Yeah, I'll be honest. You might have convinced me that it could be Thomas because I just look at the cast once again. I look at the people on the tribe. Shaheen, no way he's going home. There's just no way. He would have a way higher likelihood of getting medevac than going home. Like there's
Don't
no
put
way.
that into the ether.
Okay, well, I know I didn't say that.
I'm
I
just
didn't
kidding.
say that.
It's already happened. You can't jinx him.
Shaheen, no way. I don't think Joe goes home, and because Joe doesn't go home, I don't think Eva goes home. I think they're looking out for each other. Um, so then it's between Thomas, Bianca, and Star. At this point, I would be kind of surprised if Bianca goes home because we just haven't gotten a lot from her. You would think if she does go home that we would have a little more than I think one confessional per episode from her just to I feel like she's the type of person that will make the merge and make it decently far and we'll get more of her personality later. So yeah, I think it's between Bianca or sorry, Thomas and Star. And yeah, I don't know if Shaheen is actively looking out for Star and is actively going against Thomas. I think Shaheen is kind of running the tribe right now. Joe has the best connections, but Shaheen knows how to debate people into making them think the way he thinks. So I think yeah, I agree with you. I think Thomas is in the worst spot and is would go home if they go to tribal council right now.
Yeah.
All right,
What an episode
and
for Star.
yeah, what an episode for Star indeed. Yeah, she is a star. She's a very fun
She's great.
personality too.
Yeah, I
Uh,
really hope that she's got some longevity here.
yeah. And then finally, Green Tribe. Only four people now. We have we have Cedric, Justin, and Mary. Who do we think goes?
I think probably Mary. I just don't, unless she happens to find an idol, I don't see how the other three can get anything going. Someone would have
Yeah.
to come back from a journey with an extra vote or something, which maybe there's an extra vote at the next journey. That could definitely happen. And then Justin shows up and says, sees Cedric and says, oh, that's not a path for me to get through the three if we get there, and makes the choice. But as it stands right now, leaving this episode, I think you have to say most likely it's Mary leaving.
Yeah. And here's the thing. For me personally, I have been sort of assuming that Mary's going to go home pre-merge the entire game so far. I just saw the way that she was on Twitter and the way that she interacted, and I'm like, people who are, this funny, they don't go far in this game. And like that's a shame, but it's true. And Mary just doesn't really have any allies right now.
Yeah.
I just don't see why Cedric, Justin, and Say wouldn't just continue to band together. The only reason why somebody like Say would go home instead is if Justin and Cedric both decide that, you know what, actually I don't want Say to stay in the game. I think she's too chaotic, which could happen. But judging based on the fact that Cedric told Say explicitly to play her idol at Tribal Council when he could have blindsided her instead, makes me think that those two probably aren't turning on each other. And so I think Justin has no reason to go with Mary next episode. So yeah, I think Mary is definitely in a bad spot and would definitely go home if they go to Tribal Council right now.
Yeah.
But my final question for you is a pretty simple one, and it's just who do you think's going to win right now?
Yeah, I think if I'm putting money on anybody right now, it's got to be Shaheen. I
Yeah,
think I love the way he's playing. I think he's being really smart. He's being really thoughtful. He's in good with clearly a lot of people on his tribe. Joe, for everybody who's for all the points they've made about everybody coming to Joe and feeling like they've got really strong relationships, and Joe's got the strongest relationships on the tribe. It's really interesting that when Joe needed to go to someone, his
yeah,
person was Shaheen. I
great
loved
point.
that for him. He got involved, and he's being really thoughtful about how to deal with this advantage in the hands of somebody that they were thinking about voting out. So I can't wait to see how he thinks through the rest of the dynamics in the pre-merge and then as they get into the merge. Based on so just based on that, I think he's going to be my winner pick and definitely my like favorite player right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm between Shaheen and Camilla. I think Camilla is playing a very strategic game, very smart game. Social game is very good too. And I think she's probably going to be more under the radar than Shaheen. But I would still give it to Shaheen for being my personal, like, I picked Joe as my winner pick episode one, but like going forward, if I started now, I would pick Shaheen because everybody sees Shaheen as a threat and everybody sees Shaheen as somebody who's very strategic, but also everybody's actively trying to work with Shaheen. Nobody seems to be cutting off communication from him and being like, this guy's too big of a threat. And the thing is, he's not the most physical guy in the game. Certainly not compared to Joe, who's probably going to have a bigger physical target on his back. Definitely not as much as David. And he doesn't have any advantages that are tied to him right now. Not like Kyle does. Not like Thomas does, even if you want to look at the steal votes. Not like who else? Who am I missing? Not like Star has. And so I think that helps. And I think, he's just like he's a very good communicator and he can make people decide to do things. Thomas said, let's throw out the advantage. And Shaheen was like, no, we shouldn't do that because of this. Joe was like, what should we do? With this advantage that Star has. How should we help out if at all? And Shaheen says, these are our options that we could do, and this is why I think we should do this. And not once so far. Sure, they haven't gotten to a tribal council yet, but so far, not one person has been like, "Oh man, Shaheen is calling all the shots right now. Shaheen is telling us what to do." I think so far everybody thinks that Shaheen's ideas are their own. I think that's the way he's presenting it and is making him think like they have power. Joe says that everybody's going to him and it's a burden because everybody trusts him the most and he's in the best spot in the game. And Star is like, I have allies on my side now. I'm in a great spot now. And Thomas is like, I'm strategically there. I feel like I'm really doing well in this game. And meanwhile, Shaheen is just like not being brought up at all. He's a loyal ally to everybody and nobody at the same time. So yeah, I think Shaheen's in the best spot right now.
Yeah, I agree. Camilla's a great pick too, and it'll be fun to see more from her as that tribe continues to get more detail. But yeah, like you said, Shaheen's he's under the radar somehow. You don't get the
Yeah,
sense that people are going to be looking at him as the like, oh, we've got to get this guy out. Like might happen with if Thomas isn't the next person to go, you could see down the road someone going, oh, that guy is really strategic and really smart. and we have to get rid of him because he was playing really hard. You can
Yeah.
see someone saying to Joe, his relationships are so strong, he's going to get all of the votes if he makes it to the end. And so we have to get rid of him. And Shaheen doesn't have heat in either direction in that way, at least right now. It's only episode 2.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like Joe also has like, well, this person, he's closer to Eva than he is to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
That's also something. Is like this is a tight duo that we have to keep an eye on. To me, Shaheen at worst is like Ricard from 41 or something like that. Like where he just makes it very far, and by the end, it's like he's just too big of a threat to win to keep in the game. Like
Yeah.
that's how I feel like this is going. But
Nice.
yeah. Any other thoughts or anything, or did you get it all out of your system, or
I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but we did get another good segment about Joe and Eva, so
Yes.
that duo does seem like it's continuing through, and we love that. We
Mhm.
didn't talk too much about them this episode, but I really do love them, and Joe seems like a sweet guy, so I'm excited that it seems like they'll be sticking around and a big part of the season. I loved, like I just love the Purple Tribe. I liked their Wi-Fi password situation when
I
the
love that.
journey came up. That was so much fun to see. It's I really like when you get to think about how they're trying to pass the time when nothing else is going on. So they seem like they're having a lot of fun out there. But other than that, I think that's it. It's been pretty good so far, and I think there's a lot of potential. So I'm excited to see where we go from here.
There's a lot of potential for sure. JFK, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I really appreciated it, and yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed the episode, and see you around. Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.